So, Imo has now finally revealed the name of his crazy shape-shifting spear, Nemesis, which has immediately, by the way, become my favorite new weapon in One Piece. I'm pretty sure that this spear isn't actually originally Imu's own, and that it belonged to his nemesis, in other words, Joy Boy. But that's not all. I also think that this name alone tells us a whole lot about Imu himself, thanks to some help from good old Greek mythology. Nemesis is the name of a god, little spoiler alert. And this weapon could also be the series' next confirmed Black Blade, and might even have a connection to the world's greatest swordsman, Dracula, keep your panties up, Mihawk. So today, and I was really looking forward to this, I want to go and cover everything with you about Imu's arsenal, Nemesis, and what's actually going on. And what can I say? Like, wow, this thing just apparently does everything. Now, it's a little bit unclear, at least as of writing of this video, is whether Nemesis is the name of the sword aspect of this weapon specifically, or whether Nemesis is just the name of this weapon in general, including all of its many crazy transformations. But I'm just gonna go with the assumption that the spear, with all its shape-shifting weapon transformations, just share the same name. And of course, we gotta start out by just acknowledging the fact that Imo has a lot of weapons to like a weird degree. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but most One Piece characters, I feel like, aren't out here multi-classing, and if they do dual wield, it's usually just 2 swords, or well, sometimes even 3 swords, or sometimes up to 8 swords. But it's one weapon still. I think what I'm trying to say here in a really bad way is that characters tend to stick to their one signature thing, whether that be guns, swords, or just the good old-fashioned fists. Which is of course the reason why it stands out to me so much that Imo first showed off his devil form wielding this really cool looking flame spear, which he's been using, by the way, to cut off every finger in the tri-state area with some expert precision, I gotta say. And not only that, but this signature staff also just casually has its own cannon built into its cloudy end for some reason. But even before that, when Imo was still possessing Gunko, we saw him using it apparently as a trident. He also used his grimoire and abyssal circles to summon a blunderbuss, which is this thing in case you didn't know, I didn't know, and just some regular good old cannons. But once we then finally, of course, got Imu's true form revealed, I thought that his weapon was now gonna be properly locked in. Imo fights with the crazy cool spear, but nope, he's got me once again, because I did not foresee that Nemesis actually is kind of every weapon in one. But here we are. Basically, Imo just has every power they could ever want, and their weapon has every power that you could ever want as well, it seems. It's almost as if this dude's blade works are truly unlimited. That's kind of like the gut feeling I had when I talked about this chapter with my team. I was like, is this just Fate Night Stay? Can he just summon all the weapons, basically? Like, we're out here betting at this point what we're gonna get next week. Nunchakus next week? Chakram? Brass knucks? That'd be kind of sick. Dude, imagine Imo coming in with like the two-on-twos. Well, I mean, honestly, in just this chapter alone, we see Nemesis transform into a medieval mace, a flail, a giant sword. But despite this crazy diversity of weapons that we see, the ones that I really want to lock in on are the sword and the spear. And it just really made me wonder, because I really felt like we've already seen a character with a sword and a spear specifically somewhere before. Oh yeah, it's the sun god Nika, and also Joy Boy. In chapter 1018, in case you don't remember, the sun god Nika's very first rough depiction in the story is shown holding a sword and a spear, and on the mural, Joy Boy is depicted with a sword and a shield. Very Pokemon of him, I guess. Now, in fact, I've been actually theorizing in the past, you probably know, that in order to defeat Imo, Luffy might actually have to first find these very weapons that, you know, his previous Nika-related forebearers, I guess, which include Nika himself, that they were using, since we are so often seeing any of the sun gods pictured with these weapons as if they're like central to his identity and their very powers. And I gotta say, the idea of Luffy at some point just pulling out a sword or wielding a spear sounded very crazy cool to me. But now I gotta say, maybe I was wrong. I mean, now that Imo's revealed his crazy sword spear thing, like, I kinda have to ask 2 questions here with you. First off, where's the shield? And secondly, is this Joy Boy's weapon? Is it Nika's weapon? Like, maybe the reason the portrayals are so inconsistent, and sometimes he has a spear, and sometimes he has a sword, and sometimes it's both. Could it just be that this is because they're all based on the same transforming weapon, having all these different shapes and forms, and this is like the ultimate weapon that existed in the past? Because I've been saying for a while, especially once we got the reveal of Imu's true form, or what we think that Imu's true form is, that Imu might actually be possessing either Joy Boy's old body or Nika's body. As you probably know, one of my longest running agendas is that Nika was probably a Lunarian, and seeing Imu's white hair and the black angel wings, it just really seems like he could be borrowing, you know, his old foe's body. Or I guess if it's Joy Boy, what seems to be his old friend's body. And if that's true, it would only make sense for him to take up his weapons as well. Or maybe even simpler than that, this revelation might mean that this devil form could be Imu's own body having undergone some transformation, and that he simply took this weapon from Joy Boy after his defeat during the Void Century. And again, that same weapon that Joy Boy used who had the Nika fruit may of course then originally also have belonged to Nika themselves, whoever that was. Like, these could literally be prizes that Imu has won in battle from his former enemies, friends, lovers, I don't know. In fact, this is kind of like the perfect weapon for the sun god Nika, because Luffy's powers are of course all about imagination and transformation. I don't need to tell you, of course, that Luffy's Gear 5 powers are all about imagination. Like, he manipulates the environment to his own will, he creates things from thin air. What better weapon than one that can transform into any weapon that you want based on the will of its user, based on their own creativity? But then you might still be wondering, why exactly am I so confident that Imu's sword has anything to do with Joy Boy in the first place? After all, let's be real, there are a lot of blades in One Piece, and I haven't gone around saying that all of these are Joy Boys either. So my evidence here, of course, isn't that it's like a sword and a spear partnered together. That would be, you know, too flimsy even for my standards. No, it all comes down to the name of Imu's weapon, which is Nemesis. Now, in case you're not a native English speaker, which by the way, I'm not either as a German, but a nemesis is an enemy or adversary, like kind of like the top level, like the one guy you hate the most, pretty much. And so on top of it just sounding really cool and evil, I think there's a lot more story significance to this naming as well that Oda, you know, has actually put in here. Imu and Joy Boy were sort of maybe enemies back in the Void Century. Like, that has kind of changed with the recent chapter here as well, where like their relationship is up in the air. And I do think that Imu could have renamed this blade after stealing it from his nemesis, his arch enemy, right? It's called that because it is his enemies. But as I told you at the beginning of this video, we can go a whole lot deeper with the fact that the name is Nemesis, because while these days, you know, Nemesis is usually just used as a word for someone's arch enemy, originally this word is the name of a Greek goddess. And you and I both know that when Oda starts dropping Greek deities' names, you know, things are getting real. Zeus, Hera, Prometheus. Okay, so a lot of them are just Big Mom's homies, but you know, Ares, Poseidon, like that's an ancient weapon right there. And I think that if we just actually dig a little bit deeper into Nemesis story within Greek mythology, it can give us some more hints, not only about the sword named after her, but also about Imu's character overall, because he's mostly just been wiping the floor with everything and everyone, so, you know, we still haven't gotten to see anything new about their personality yet, I think. And I really hope that Oda gives us another name drop for that spear soon as well, because if that thing's called, like, Thanatos, then I'm just gonna have a field day. We're gonna do all of mythology. Alright, so Greek mythology time. My Hades 2 players already know this, but Nemesis is the goddess of retribution. Nemesis is a god who punishes wrongdoers or criminals. It's not just about an idea of revenge here, but specifically just retribution in the sense of justice. So you could kind of argue just based on that Nemesis is a very fitting weapon for the head of the world government, The Marines quite literally wear the word justice on their backs, and based on the hints around what Imu has already said, he very much feels justified in what he's doing. Like, I can't stress this enough, but it really seems like, from his very own perspective, he sees himself as the good guy of this story. He is the one who's doing the right thing for the world. After all, remember that the way that he put it in this very chapter, he says that his domination will bring true happiness. Like, in a way, his goal seems to be creating a perfect world, but also in a terribly twisted way, which of course has been something shared by many other One Piece villains. Crocodile, Big Mom, Kaido, etc, etc. It also feels like he was wronged in some very grave way in the past, is the feeling I get, and therefore his actions now are kind of retribution for whatever happened to him maybe during the Void Century. Like, I swear, once we get that entire Imu backstory, and that maybe sooner rather than later, at this point I wouldn't even be surprised if Elbaf gets another Imu backstory, Oda's gonna start rolling some stones and make me somehow have sympathy for the literal devil. I can just see it coming, similarly how we already got a little bit of that with Blackbeard during the Rocks flashback. You see, it's actually pretty similar to how our idea of Nemesis has evolved over time as well. I mean, currently, Nemesis as a word has a very strongly negative vibe to it, but originally, this Greek goddess had more to do with the idea of fortune and balance if someone, say, became way too blessed or too lucky and therefore grew very arrogant. Her job was to bring misfortune here so that that person would actually remain humble. And then over time, it became about punishing evil deeds, about retribution, and in that very same way, Imu himself likely began with more pure intentions, I think, and is now seen as like the ultimate evil, while still maintaining that his own role is very much justified and the right thing to do to bring balance and control the world. This actually also really does fit in nicely with the entire devil motive, of Lucifer being the most beautiful of all the angels before his rebellion and thinking that he can rule better and more justly than God. Remember that Lucifer took like a third of heaven with him, actually, and rebelled against God. And then, of course, he had his fall from grace, which we actually see reflected in Imu's very good-looking face and his luscious looks, but also his sense that he is doing the right thing. Seriously though, like, this guy must probably buy like the same conditioner as Griffith from Berserk, cause his hair looks fantastic. I got a haircut too, but it does not look that good. Jesus. Back to Nemesis herself now and some of the actual roles that are really interesting that she plays in mythology, which may apply to Imu too. So most often, Nemesis is viewed as the daughter of Nyx, the primordial goddess of night. Now that by itself already screams abyss to me already, right? Also, you know who else was a daughter of Nyx? My mom! Oh, sorry mom. I didn't mean that. It's Eris. Eris, the goddess of chaos, aka Rox's wife, aka Blackbeard's mommy. And since Imu definitely seemed to know Davy D. Jones, I'm calling it now that there's some huge significance to this naming here as well, especially since Oda has dropped it in the very same arc. However, interestingly enough, in some versions of the mythology, Nemesis is also the daughter of Oceanus, the Titan of the sea. And this alternate origin for Nemesis also works really well with Imu, since he's the one who's trying to, flood the entire One Piece planet. And the other Nemesis story from Greek mythology that I think connects even better to One Piece has to do with Nemesis' daughter. In some versions of the story, Nemesis is the mother of Helen of Troy. Now, more often it's Leda, but sometimes it's Nemesis. Now, for those of us who weren't forced to learn ancient Greek in school like this boy and who are unfamiliar with the Iliad, or as the real ones call it, Troy story, Helen was the most beautiful woman in the entire world. And in extremely simplified terms, basically all of Greece kind of goes to war over her. And I gotta say, to me, that sounds a whole lot like the story of God Valley, a war between all the world's strongest factions, with the world's most beautiful woman, Shaki, being the price. And since One Piece seems to be cyclical, with the same figures and events kind of reoccurring throughout the ages, again, Imu just calling Loki Nidhogg, I'm pretty sure that Lily might have been in that same role during the Void Century, and Imu, given his crazy Lily obsession, was likely one of the people fighting for her hand, therefore bringing us another link between the Greek Nemesis and Nerona Imu. Also, let me take a quick break. I need to take a note here. I just had a fun video idea that I need to look deeper into because I was just wondering, I'm just gonna share it with you, little sidetrack because I think it's fun. I was just wondering, the fact that Imu keeps talking to people as if they're other people, like how he talks to Loki as, Nidhogg, and how he talks to Luffy like, Joy Boy, and how he talks to Zebek like, Davy D. Jones, like it could be that he's just seeing, you know, like characters like them and like kind of who've inherited their will to a certain degree, and that's why he's kind of confusing them or just like naming whoever they're after. I was wondering, you know how we talked about the idea that devil fruits might have actual devils inside of them, like act the spirit of these people or beings? Could it be that as the primal devil, is Imu just able to directly communicate with that like sleeping devil inside the devil fruit? And you know how in the past I've talked about how like certain people take over characteristics from other people who had eaten the same devil fruit? What if it's like actual awakening, where we also talked about actual awakening awakens the devil and they take over part of your personality, and maybe to a certain degree they can even take you over completely? Is Imu just actually not talking to like Loki here, but to the Nidhogg devil in the devil fruit? Or did Roxy Zebek, who we still don't know if he had a devil fruit or not, did he actually have like a Davy Jones fruit or something, and Luffy has like the Nika fruit? Like, is he actually talking to these spirits? I'm gonna write it down. Is Imu talking to literal devils? I'm gonna look more into this, and please, you let me know if you'd like to see this video. I think it's like a fun idea. Just came up randomly. Back to the video. But hey, you were part of my random ideation process. All right, all in all, bringing back to my point, the name Nemesis seems very intentional on Oda's part here. Now, what I want to ask next is, what about that shield though? Like, if we're seeing either Nika or Joy Boy's sword / spear here, where's that shield that we always see depicted? Now, while Helen of Troy's mother is sometimes Nemesis, her father is the Greek god Zeus, who does wield the very famous shield Aegis, or Aegis, I'm not sure how to pronounce it in English, Aegis I guess, and Imu's world government has the spy organization Cypher Pol Aegis Zero. That's the official name. They act as the shield of the world government as opposed to the Marines' sword organization, I guess. Is that Aegis a hint that Imu is also in possession of Joy Boy's shield? Does the spear also transform into a legendary like shield? He's got the big straw hat in Deep Freeze and now all of these crazy weapons that we see usually associated with Nika or Joy Boy, so it wouldn't surprise me too much if Imu just had everything that once belonged to Joy Boy, possibly even including the poor guy's body. Either possessing it, or maybe it's just deep frozen wherever the straw hat is frozen as well. Then, of course, alternatively, Joy Boy's shield could also be hidden away somewhere as a sort of failsafe. Like it might be stashed away on Laugh Tale or somewhere else, waiting for its rightful inheritor Luffy to pick it up so that he'll actually have a chance to fight back against Imu or defending against the impossibly strong attacks of Nemesis. The unparalleled strength of a Black Blade. That is assuming that Imu's weapon is a Black Blade, or is Black Blade in plural, I guess. I mean, the spear's blade does look pretty black to me. We only have 2 confirmed Black Blades in the series, which are Shusui and Yoru, but this could theoretically be the 3rd. There are some other candidates like Whitebeard's one and so on and so forth, but chances are pretty high. Now, I mean, obviously the ones that he conjures out of the Nightmare Abyss clouds are black, but what about the actual spear blade? I mean, part of it is black, but it mostly looks normal. Of course, let's not forget that the blade of Shusui also has a lot of white on the blade as well, like the pattern and stuff. And since we have a sample size of only exactly two things, I'm not really ready to fully commit that we can determine a black blade just by like kind of eyeballing it at this point. So there's always a chance that Nemesis is not a black blade at all, but I'm just gonna riff a little bit on the idea here that they actually are, because if that were to be true, it could have some truly insane implications. Namely, that Emu isn't wielding the weapons that belong to Joy Boy, but that he's actually wielding Joy Boy himself. Alright, see, I think it was right around the time that the truth behind Ragnar was revealed that I had this idea, and I made a whole video about it in the past, all about the truth behind black blades and cursed swords that, you know, if you're interested, you can watch after this video, we'll link it below, but I'll try to summarize the idea here for a second. See, after Ragnar's last owner died, like that legendary warrior Elbaf, the warrior god of the island, right? His faithful servant Ratatoskr literally bonded his own soul and being to the hammer, allowing it to transform into squirrel mode in order to serve as the guardian of the Mihawk fruit and eventually Loki's partner in battle. Now, this of course has some huge implications because what do you mean a soul can just permanently be infused into a weapon and make it come alive? So, my theory goes something like this. Black blades aren't just turned into black blades by having so much armament hockey pouring into them over time to the point where it all becomes permanent. After all, that doesn't really line up with anything that we've seen in the story, because if that were to be the case, then why aren't swords by many or most of the other top-tier hockey users turning black immediately? Take Shanks, the hockey god, he should be turning his sword black just by walking past it. And then we have Odin's Enma, which does have his hockey, as we know, permanently infused within it, and still is not a black blade. So instead, I was thinking, what if what actually makes it a black blade is the previous user's soul itself permanently having been embedded into it somehow. Like in my previous video, for example, I speculated that Kuina's soul might actually be inside of the Wado Ichimonji, and that by realizing their shared dream, Zoro might be able to awaken the sword and turn it into a black blade. And just again, riffing off that idea a little bit, what if this could also be the case for Nemesis and this unnamed spear, or maybe the same thing? What if Joy Boy's very soul, or at least like a piece of it, is literally carried inside of his old weapon? And the best part of this is that technically Nemesis doesn't even need to be a black blade for this to even be true. After all, I'm not 100% sure Ragnar counts as a black blade either, a black hammer. Kind of cool though. But it could be that a weapon could carry a soul without yet having undergone that transformation. So either way, Nemesis could have Joy Boy trapped inside of it. Or alternatively, Nemesis opens up yet another possibility for just how black blades are made. It could relate to these pacts that Emu talks about in this chapter, and that its power relates to a deal with the devil, so to speak. Now, this of course would tie into the whole idea of the Faustian bargain, an idea from the play Dr. Faustus, which was written in Germany, hey, this represent, in which a man makes a deal with the devil in exchange for forbidden knowledge, like the OG story, right? But this also has been continued by several historical examples of people making a deal with the devil for knowledge, power, or fame. So, could Ryuma have made a deal with, say, Emu in exchange for becoming the world's greatest swordsman? Could the same thing be true of Dracul Mihawk? Just saying. So, yeah, I mean, Nemesis in its sword form has a pretty big crossguard, kinda like Yoru. This is yet another connection between the king of the world and the world's greatest swordsman. And not only that, but Emu literally hit the same technique that Mihawk used in Marineford, this like downward thrusting, which of course, you know, is a bit of a stretch. Like Mihawk hasn't exactly patented this like very specific move, but it's still interesting. In case you didn't know, this is also a move known as the Link or the Sephiroth. But I'm absolutely stoked to see this because my agenda just grows ever stronger. Mihawk and Emu already have the same eyes, and now they have similar blades and similar sword techniques. Dude, I've been talking all about how Emu could be a distant descendant of Emu, or how he might even be a former Holy Knight, and that might be the reason why him and Shanks are just total besties, because, see, Mihawk's full name kind of spells it out. We've talked about this before a bunch of times, just bringing it back up if you've forgotten. Dracul literally means son of the dragon, or son of the devil, like the celestial dragons, like the literal devil Emu. We've kind of figured it all out, I think. Or did we? Because if this isn't actually Emu's sword, but it was originally Joy Boy's sword, really random, but I'm just, we're riffing at this point, we're at that point in the video. Could that connect Mihawk not to Emu, but instead to Joy Boy or Nika? And this is especially true if my other theory about Emu actually being inside of Joy Boy or Nika's body would turn out to be true, because then Mihawk could, in a way, be a descendant of both of them at the same time, which is why he's got those spooky, scary Emu eyes, but they're not red, they're just yellow, and the red might come from Emu possessing that body. But maybe I've just been reading the entire Son of the Dragon thing a little bit wrong the entire time, because the celestial dragons aren't the only dragons on the block. Nika is also pretty closely associated with dragons too, since dragons are such a strong symbol of so many Joy Boy affiliated countries. Wano's got Kaido, Elbaf's got Nidhogg. It's almost like the world nobles are just kind of taking the name of the dragons who used to rule the One Piece world, and then kind of, stealing valor from the true Nika-related dragons and calling themselves the Celestial Dragons, and, getting up in the Holy Land and the Red Line where the previous gods of the One Piece world, the Lunarians, used to rule. But I guess that's a whole different theory, of course. Honestly, Son of the Dragon, that could also just be a name as simple as connecting Mihawk to Luffy, since Luffy is very literally also Son of the Dragon, right? That's just his dad's name, and since Luffy is the next Joy Boy, Mihawk could actually play a way bigger role in helping him fulfill his destiny than we previously ever thought. Usually, we obviously think that the world's greatest swordsman is, connected to Zoro, but let's also not forget why Mihawk even decided to train Zoro in the first place. It was because Zoro, in this moment, cast his own pride and even his dream aside, because he wanted to accomplish this for Luffy's sake, not his own sake, in order to make his captain the king of the pirates. Once he made his request about Luffy, that was when Mihawk finally agreed. And I think this kind of flies under the radar quite often, but Mihawk has kind of always taken a pretty big shine to Luffy, even back on the Baratie. He was super intrigued by seeing Luffy with the straw hat. After their first meeting, he went out of his way to share these news with Shanks. And now that it seems that Shanks knew all about the Nika fruit and Luffy's future role that he needs to play, it also feels more likely that Mihawk also knew that same information, partly from Shanks maybe, or due to their connection to Emu and the Holy Knights, and Mihawk just seems to know a lot of things that he's not letting on as well. And if that's the case, then Mihawk could very well be a figure like Rayleigh or Scopper, who has secretly also been working towards Joy Boy's return all this time, which kind of tracks with a lot of the stuff that he's been up to. It's even Mihawk himself who has the very whole quote about Luffy's true power being the ability to rally people to his side. And in retrospect, it's like he absolutely knows that this is an ability associated with the god of liberation, Nika. Just kidding, but low-key not kidding. At this point, I wouldn't even be surprised if his real name turns out to be Mihawk D. Racule. Hey, there's a D and it's suspicious. And therefore, I think that Luffy's gotta get Nemesis from Emu Man. It's like his birthright or destiny as the next Nika or something like that. And since Luffy does not have mad sword skills, last time I checked at least, it would actually be pretty sick if he could just pull the Joy Boy's soul out of it and use that to buff himself somehow, or he's just gonna get huge alongside Emu, both of them growing bigger and bigger until Luffy can actually use the big sword that's just stabbed into Elbaf, right, in the Atom Tree. I don't know, I just wanted to point out that Oda once again went out of his way to highlight that giant sword this week, just randomly teasing us with it again. But since we already talked a lot about Black Blades today, if you're telling yourself, that's crazy. Why would black blades have people inside of them? I highly encourage that you check out that full theory right here so you can get the full explanation. I think it's really cool and holds up very well with this last chapter. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Thanks so much to all of our fantastic and awesome Patreons. Can't express enough how much you guys mean. Like, that entire support makes this channel go. If you want to check it out, link is below as well. And I'll see you in the next video.